Did you have a question?
I started.
Oh, okay. Can we move on? You want to? Okay.
I'll try.
Okay.
I'm in my garden and onions, a truck comes by and a book falls off and I need a knife to scrape it up and I go back to the house and the radio's on. So I listen to the song, it's Tears of a Clown, I want to write it down. I go in the house to get the paper, I look at my watch. It's near 1 o'clock, I usually watch Ellen. I know I'm going to need Kleenex to wipe the tears when I laugh and a pillow because I'm going to curl up on the couch and then a car comes and it's Jim. He brought home an incense stick and cream because we're going to have company tonight. We're going to watch the football on the television and after that we're going to stand kiss.
Very good.
Very good. Yes.
My problem is, in this one, is I've got tomato sauce in my head. So it's very difficult to figure.
Yeah, and so, normally you wouldn't be, trying to remember things like this, right, one after another. So there is a bit of interference, and that's part of how our memory works, is that we have only a finite set of resources at any one time. So you can get some interference from one thing to the other. And in fact, forgetting is a whole skill in itself. And there are people at Dalhousie in psychology who study forgetting, directed forgetting. How do you forget? And it actually is an active process. You can also have simple passive, decay, but you can also, actively forget. So sometimes we need to do that too.
You said passive decay. I like that one. Happy class.
Yeah. Right.
What did you mean by passive?
It just sort of gradually fading away. Yeah, without doing anything about it. And a lot of what we're trying to remember does that if you don't actively work on it, right? And that's what space retrieval is supposed to prevent, is that decay, right? Without work. Yes?
Can I try it?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Onion, truck, book, knife, radio, clown, paper, watch, stick, cream, football, television, and tree.
Okay, you missed one.
Oh, Kleenex. Pillow.
And car, right.
Okay.
But see, this is great. Do you see how this actually works? With a little bit of practice, you can just do this, right? I remembered the onion in a truck in my driveway, and the book with a knife in it on the deck. Colleen in a clown suit doing an interview. There's the radio and the clown. And she was interviewing me, and she had a watch on, kept looking at the time, and she was writing down her notes on a piece of paper. And I was making a total wreck of it, so I felt like crying and I needed a Kleenex. I walked in. So you can see how everyone can have a slightly different set of stories to do exactly the same thing. Yeah?
Yeah, I know I forgot the car because I was trying to make a link to it the first time, and I got caught on the second three subjects.
Right, because they all fit together.
Yeah. So when
Yeah.
I did that one,
Yeah.
I forgot about the car.
Yeah, and I had trouble with the car too, because I was at that point in my living room. I'm like, how do I put a car in the living room? And I had to think about this little ornament I had, which is a London double-decker bus. I had to stick that on my mantle, and that gave me color. Okay. Very good. Now you're up to 16. I want you to try a longer list over the next week. Do we have one on the
We
on the
don't have
website?
it on the website yet, but we will post a longer list for you to practice
For you to
with.
try, okay? And then if you find other lists that you want to do, try to memorize pi, for instance. Okay, so we've heard a little bit about how it works, and some people find it easier than others. Some people are really taking to it, I can see, yeah.
I have a question. You mentioned these memory guys that were doing the deck of cards.
Right.
Are they using a different system, or do they have it just down so pat that they can do it so fast?
They're using a memory palace, just like you guys were. That's what they do. But they have very, 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 very expanded ones. They practice this day after day after day. There's a great podcast about about a reporter who decided to to look at and to do a story on the memory champions, and actually started working on it himself. And he actually won. He ended up winning his category. So I wish I don't have the link to it right now, but if you Google, reporter and memory champions, you might get to it. I think his name is Josh something. But it's really, what takes the work is first of all, creating a really long path, if that's what you want to do, and a consistent one. And then practicing those links. And they practice doing it so that they can get faster and faster and faster at making those links. And there are different kinds of strategies or different kinds of even structures you can use. So another one might be, I don't know if you remember the sequence 1 bun, 2 shoe, 3 tree, 4 knee. So you could use that instead. Number 1 is a bun. I'm going to attach that to an onion. I'm going to imagine a bun with an onion. So there's my first item, onion. 2 is a shoe. Well, that was a truck, so I'm going to imagine, shoes coming out of the back of the truck as it's going down the road. So you can do it that way too, right? So all it takes is a bit of a structure to which you link and attach what you want to remember.
And don't forget too, you also end up compacting more into it. So that, again, with more strategies, you chunk information and you can fit bigger and bigger chunks of information in each spot.
That's a really good point. Like the peanut butter on the bread, right? And maybe, covered with tomato sauce, right? And you can imagine that as 3 items in one, so you have 3 for 1.
Now,
Yeah, Pat.
this list that's going to be on the computer, if you don't do computers, I have to access the list somehow.
Well, we haven't made it up yet, but
Okay.
why don't you make up your own list? Get someone to create a list of 25 words, and you practice it from that.
Okay, because I was thinking again, if you're not on computer
Yeah.
or email and stuff,
Yeah.
this is,
Yeah, so if you don't have to use our list, find a list that you want to learn. Maybe there is some information that you want to learn, 25 items. I use it when I give talks. So if I don't want to use notes, I will sort of go through my house and think about the different things I want to say as I go through my house. So for instance, the first thing usually I want to say is, thank you for inviting me. I'm very pleased to be here, and today my talk is blah. And so I imagine myself on my front porch, saying thank you. And then I go into my house and I imagine the next thing I want to say, whatever the topic is. And then I go to the next room and I imagine the next topic. So I can link up the sequence of the talk that I want to give. So you can apply it to different goals. So temporary and quick lists to remember over the short term when paper isn't available. You're driving in the car and suddenly you're thinking about, I've got to get these couple of items at the grocery store. Stick them in your memory path. Get to the grocery store, just go through the memory path. Under conditions when you don't want to use notes, like giving a speech. Some people don't like to use notes, so they want to maybe give yourself a challenge if you're giving a speech. And practice it that way, using your memory path instead. Can you think of any other ways you might use it?
I'm thinking, remembering that you have a list to begin with.
Yes.
I've written out the list of what things I want to get at the grocery store, and get to the
Right.
grocery store and start thinking about all the things I want to get the list at the grocery store, except that I know I've got a list, but I'm not using it.
Right. Well, or you're in our case when we forget the list,
Yes.
right? And then you're left with, oh my gosh. So having done something mentally might have backed you up, right? A cue for remembering to do something over the short term, like me trying to remember that I want to do something about the boot camp talk when I get to my office. So you can use little imagery types of associations for that as well, and when you link it to a place, perhaps, or link it to a person. You want to remember to tell, Auntie M that you want her to come over for coffee on Saturday. So think about Auntie M. Think about her with a coffee overturned on her head,
Oh, no.
right? And that would remind you, if you can kind of visualize that, to when the next time you see Auntie M, to ask her over for coffee. Long-term memory, this one will be a challenge, as everyone has recognized, in terms of if you want to devote a path to one specific sequence that you want to maintain in long-term memory, then you need to use a little more. In addition to the mental imagery, as I said, things will passively perhaps fade over time. So using, a space retrieval to keep it active is one way to do it, okay? And if you want to do this a lot, I suggest you have a few memory paths that you can call on, just to make sure that you don't have interference if you're doing this fairly frequently. Okay, wrapping it up. 3 R's to a good memory. Okay. And what are the 2 strategies we've been talking about last time and this time? The space retrieval, right, or say it again, Sam. And the deep linking and the memory path. And so what we're trying to do, remember those 3 spots, those 3 steps to a good memory. The deep linking is really on that receiving end in the sense that you are really paying attention to the information when you're making these images. But it also helps at the retrieval end because it provides a lot of context and cues to retrieve it later. And those 2 things are really linked together. And the space retrieval is really focusing on practicing that retrieval, that active process that requires a lot of work. And the more you test yourself with this, the more you practice retrieving it over longer periods of time, that retrieval is now a skill for you that helps you retrieve the information. So you see how we've been trying to link the memory, the 3 R's to a good memory, to the different strategies. Now, we've just hit the surface here. There's lots more that we could be talking about. So Ryan and I are working on more sessions like this, so hopefully they'll be available soon. Remember that all of these strategies need practice, so I hope you will continue to try to use these 2 in your daily life. Now, face names. Someone mentioned this. Imagery is a really good way to remember face names too when you have challenges, and we could spend a whole session on that. That would be, but space retrieval is also really good. You can combine the 2. Yeah.
It's kind of, I go around asking people and tell them why. And I couldn't remember this woman's name. So she said, there is a Santa Claus. I said, Virginia. And I thought, yeah, that's how I'll remember.
Absolutely.
It's my brain.
That is a great association. That is great. And you see, those associations take practice too, but some people are easier to do that with than others, right? Depending on what you're trying to remember in the person themselves. And yeah, so more available if you're interested when we get it together. And so you've got a few tools right now, so I hope you enjoy using them. And thank you so much for your engagement and your attention. It's been really fun working with you. And hopefully if you've done our job, your brain feels full.